Having your jersey number retired is one of the highest honors that an athlete can earn after a career in professional sports. Over time, it has become a much more common occurrence, but early on in pro sports, it was pretty darn rare. One of the first official numbers to be retired by a team in a professional North American sports league on record was the number 6 belonging to hockey player Ace Bailey, who played for the Toronto Maple Leafs during the infancy of the NHL. Bailey was one of the best players in the early NHL, leading the league in scoring in 1928 and leading the Leafs to a Stanley Cup in 1932 before his career was unceremoniously cut short when he was severely injured in a fight with the rival Boston Bruins. Eddie Shore, one of the Bruins who was renowned for his toughness and defensive prowess, charged at Bailey from behind, punching him and knocking him down to the ice. That caused the Toronto Star to smash his head and put him in a coma for 10 days. Luckily, he made it out of the coma and had a full recovery, but unfortunately, Bailey's hockey days were over. After about a 1-year cooling period, the team wanted to find a way to honor its fallen star. There were a variety of ideas that were discussed, but eventually, the Maple Leafs owners decided that they would try hanging Bailey's jersey in the rafters, and that no other Toronto player would ever wear Bailey's number 6 jersey on the ice ever again. And just like that, a tradition was born. Many of the early retirements can be traced back to similar situations of tragedy, like when the New York Yankees retired Lou Gehrig's number 4 jersey following his famous retirement, which was forced by ALS. But as time went on and more players put together epic careers for a franchise, it turned into an honor not only bestowed upon the dying and the disabled. In addition to their former stars, teams also started to retire numbers that were symbolic to the franchise. Like 2 NBA franchises, the Sacramento Kings and Orlando Magic, who both retired the number 6 in honor of their 6th man, the fans. In the college ranks, the University of Michigan's football team retired Gerald Ford's number 48 as he went on to become the 38th President of the United States. And then, obviously, there are countless numbers retired across professional sports for players who put together exceptional careers for one franchise. There is no shortage of reasons that a team will end up retiring a former player's number. But if you ask me, some teams, especially the newer franchises, get a little bit carried away with the whole retiring numbers thing. And such is the case with the Miami Heat, Miami's NBA franchise, who back in 2005 decided to retire the former Miami Dolphins star quarterback Dan Marino's number 13. Now, don't get me wrong, Dan Marino was one hell of a quarterback. He is easily the most decorated quarterback in Miami Dolphins history, and he sits atop the Mount Rushmore of Miami athletes. I mean, just listen to what Dwayne Wade, a superstar who actually played for the Miami Heat, had to say about the pedestal that Marino is on in Miami. I think of Dan Marino like everybody else. He was definitely on the list when I came in, a guy that it might be cool one day to reach that level, but he's the main one I think about. And if D. Wade's opinion doesn't matter much to you because of the whole he played basketball thing, there's no shortage of NFL Hall of Famers who have raved about Marino's ability on the gridiron, like Don Shula, who has tirelessly referred to Marino as the best quarterback ever. While there are plenty of Pats fans, coaches, and players who might have something else to say about that now, you've got to give the man the credit he deserves. He's one of the best in NFL history, if not the best, despite holding the dubious honor of being the greatest QB ever to lace him up and not take home the Lombardi Trophy.
I can't stand retirement.
Come on, just let me win one Super Bowl.
In exchange for eternal damnation of your soul?
You did it for Namath.
That's not to diminish what he accomplished on the football field, because he is truly great. Marino led the NFL in passing yards and touchdowns 5 and 3 times respectively. He also had 9 Pro Bowl appearances, 8 All-Team Pro selections, and in 1984 he earned NFL MVP honors. At the conclusion of his 17-year odyssey in the NFL, Marino was heralded as the most prolific passer in the history of the league. It wasn't just his lightning-quick release or his effortless ability to hit a man down the field, right in stride. The fact of the matter is he put up numbers and he consistently led mediocre teams to overachieve. In addition to holding 25 single-season records when he retired, Marino also held the NFL's all-time records for touchdown passes with 420, passing yards with 61,367, and completions with 4,967. And remember, he was doing this at a time when the NFL game was, let's be honest, completely different. Nowadays, the rules are designed to protect the signal callers and encourage passing the ball, and as a result, we see a handful of 4,000-yard passing performances every year. But it wasn't always like that.
How many touchdowns do you think you could throw in today's game? Let's say you're 23 years of age.
60.
Marino was the gold standard passing for 4,000 yards in 4 of his first 5 NFL seasons, including that legendary 1984 campaign in which he threw for 5,000 yards and 48 touchdowns, numbers which at the time were simply unheard of. There were plenty of talented QBs patrolling NFL fields, but people just didn't throw for those kinds of numbers back then. To put it in perspective, let's take a look at his legendary 1984 campaign. Despite leading the entire NFL in attempts, Marino was still able to finish second in completion percentage for quarterbacks that started the entire season, only behind the living legend Joe Montana by 0.4%. But what makes this all the more impressive is Marino was not like many of the quarterbacks we see today that post sky-high completion percentage clips, but throw the majority of their passes underneath and in the flats. Marino led an explosive Miami offense that season, and for the majority of his career, there was a very similar feel to his offenses that we see with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs today. No margin is ever out of reach, no throw is ever too challenging, and no receiver is ever truly covered. It isn't just anecdotal either. The numbers bear it out. I mean, just look at how he stacked up against the guys trailing him in a variety of passing categories during that epic 1984 season. He had 16 more touchdowns than the second-place Dave Craig, over 400 more passing yards than Neil Lomax, and he led Montana by 0.6 yards per attempt and by 6 quarterback rating points. So basically across the board, Marino was better than his competition in nearly every category, despite operating in a much higher capacity than his peers. Also, just to be clear, although that 1984 season was widely recognized as the best season ever put together for an NFL quarterback, and Marino never ended up hitting most of those numbers again, nor did he ever return to the big game, it isn't like this was just some flash in the pan. He would lead the league in touchdowns the following 2 seasons as well, and led the NFL in passing yards 4 more times in his illustrious career. It just seemed like, for whatever reason, the Dolphins brass could not put together a complete team around him, which more often than not you need if you want to make a Super Bowl run, let alone come home with the Lombardi Trophy. Here's some context for just how overmatched Marino's sides often were. During his 17-year career, 13 of the teams that took home the Lombardi Trophy had a 1,000-yard rusher on their roster, and an insane 16 of the 17 teams had a top 10 ranked defense during the regular season. Meanwhile, Marino played with a 1,000-yard rusher just once during a career that spanned nearly 2 decades. And on the defensive side of the ball, his teams weren't much better. Miami's defense only finished in the top 10 4 times. That's less than 25% of his career, leaving Marino to cover up for porous, unbalanced rosters. To make matters worse, and to make his accomplishments look even more impressive, he wasn't really getting much help from his receiving core either. Throughout his entire career, Marino played alongside just 3 Pro Bowl receivers, Mark Clayton, Mark Duper, and Irving Fryer. Those 3 players accounted for just 10 Pro Bowl selections while they played in Miami. Think about some of the best NFL quarterbacks in recent memory, and granted, they deserve credit for the positive impact they have had on their receivers' numbers. But come on, the disparity in talent that they had over Marino at receiver is crazy. Peyton Manning had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, who netted 13 Pro Bowl selections between the 2 of them during their time with Manning and Indy. Even Pat Mahomes has had a plethora of support during his young career. Tyreek Hill is one of the fastest guys we have ever seen in the NFL, and he's been a Pro Bowler in each of his 4 seasons as a professional. Travis Kelce is about as good as a receiving tight end as there has ever been, earning 5 Pro Bowl selections and 6 seasons as a starter. And the supporting cast is loaded with talent, with guys like Sammy Watkins, a former number 8 overall pick out of Clemson, and Mecole Hardman, who ran a 4.33 second 40 at the Combine and has emerged as quite the weapon. I say all this to say, Marino gets a bit of a bum rap for not being able to carry 2 decades of very mediocre Miami talent to the pinnacle of success in the NFL. I'm sure at this point you get it. Dan Marino was pretty good at playing quarterback. We don't need to beat a dead horse anymore. The question remains though, why did the Miami Heat, the local professional basketball club, retire his number 13 jersey? Well, the answer has a few components to it. First off, the Miami Heat are not a very old franchise. The Heat began play in the 1988-89 NBA season as an expansion team. And while the organization has been pretty successful, especially for such a young expansion team, there is only so much history that you can accumulate in just over 3 decades. In fact, not including Marino, the Heat have only had 4 jerseys officially retired, and one of them is Michael Jordan, who actually tortured the Heat during his prime and never even played a single second in a Miami jersey. At least Dwayne Wade's number 3 jersey is retired, so Miami can start building up some legitimacy in its rafters. It isn't just that the Miami Heat are still a relatively young NBA franchise, Miami is also very famously not a sports town. Even if you don't follow the NBA super closely, it is hard to traverse the social media streets and not come across a couple of good memes roasting the Miami fan base. It isn't that the good people of South Beach don't love sports, because there are plenty of diehard Dolphins fans and what have you. But let's be honest, there's definitely a stigma about Miami sports fans for a reason. While there are plenty of folks strolling around Miami with discretionary income, they don't care to spend it on professional sporting events, that is, unless the teams are excelling. We saw that pretty damn clearly in the aftermath of LeBron James' departure from South Beach. So as a result, the ownership groups down in Miami lean on a variety of promotional strategies to keep fans engaged, and with Marino set to be enshrined in Canton as part of the 2005 NFL Hall of Fame class, the Heat decided to tag along and hang Marino's jersey in the rafters. Even if it didn't generate a ton of long-term buzz, at least they could sell some tickets to the game that they honored him in. Marino embodied a different time in Miami sports history, and before Dwayne Wade brought home 3 NBA championships, Marino stood alone as the pinnacle of performance in professional sports for Miami franchises. And at the end of the day, winners put asses in the seats and money in the owners' pockets, especially in Miami. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to do that by clicking the subscribe button down below. If you like the video, then like the video. We'd really appreciate it. And last but not least, don't forget to tune into TPS every single day for more cool videos. We'll see you next time.